What are my feelings about LGBT pride festivals and parades? Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and it's June, which means Pride Month for LGBTQIAA plus fucking whatever. And it occurred to me that a lot of people come to my channel because they view me as some sort of gay guy with common sense who has been around the block a few times in gay land. And so they probably want to know my opinion on pride festivals and parades. First and foremost, I need to make it abundantly clear that I have definitely had more than one weekend of gay pride festivities filled to the brim with complete and utter degeneracy. I've been in San Francisco for numerous pride festivals, and while I was never on a float in a jockstrap on MDMA or crystal meth, if you ever get me into a social situation that isn't being recorded, I can tell you some funny stories about other things that I have done or have happened to me during Pride celebrations. But what do I think of Pride parades, parties, and other such related things? Well, briefly, these days, they seem to be a good mix of one part that is the tackiest consumerism and advertising bullshit imaginable, as if it's a competition of which particular brand of vodka can create the most unappealing plastic promotional items that might actually inspire me specifically to never buy their liquor. Then, Pride also consists of a very specified political agenda coming from various different professional activists and the groups that they are attached to, which make all of the speeches in the parks after the parades rather exhausting. And this year, the political agenda is clearly going far beyond that, which I'll get back to in a bit. Finally, there is a small dash of purpose for the portion of LGBT people that might still be getting used to the idea of being queer, or starting a family, or finding camaraderie in a new city. Every year is somebody's first Pride Festival, so for the uninitiated, there's definitely a purpose. For me, though, my first Pride Parade was when I was about 15, and some gay bookstore was throwing out free books, and I ended up catching some fucking freaky ass leather bondage erotica, where guys were doing things to each other in the book, in text, that I would rather not mention in this video. The funny thing was that at the time, I'm like 15 reading this gay erotic book, bondage, sadomasochism. After I read this book innocently, that I can aptly describe as trash, I was convinced that it wasn't pornography because there weren't any pictures. I told somebody that it was rather sophisticated. I'm kind of embarrassed. Regardless, due to the fact that I had a pretty easy coming out of the closet story in the grand scheme of things, because of that, gay pride parades were never usually a huge deal for me, especially because I hate crowds and I lived in New York City from when I was 18 to 23, and New York City pride is pretty fucking boring, at least certainly compared to the festivities in San Francisco, which can legitimately be really fun if you know where to go. Still, by the time I learned to enjoy pride festivities, I was 110% comfortable with being gay. And like a lot of people say about pride festivals, it really was just an excuse for me to party and be kind of crazy. In the same way that New Year's is for everybody, or St. Patrick's Day or Mardi Gras festivals are for people who are into that kind of thing. However, this year, things are really fucking crazy with gay pride, and people are politicizing the fuck out of it. And while I can't give you my definitive opinions on what I think about this year's festivities, I'm not going to attend a festival for the record, so I can't, tell you exactly what I think. I can offer you a window into a few things as a consolation prize. The first is this Facebook post from a friend of mine that lives in LA, who seems to be annoyed with the fact that this year's LGBT Pride Parade in Los Angeles is being replaced with some sort of anti-Trump protest. which is obviously kind of ridiculous and completely out of touch with culture because there's a lot of LGBT people that support Trump, actually. But whatever, here's what my friend says. And for the record, I'd classify him as a purple pill person who is mostly friends with SJWs, but he also at least likes Blair White videos. That's about all I know about his political leanings at the moment. Pride is nothing more than corporate agendas attached to ideologies of sexual liberation by means of commodifying the gay identity for the common man. Is gay a hot trend we can buy into? And if so, is that appropriation? Pride is big business, and now we use that business model to protest a man whose many big businesses have in the past been a supporter slash sponsor of Pride events. Turning Pride into a protest in this context is like turning a Pepsi commercial into a protest. They are both parodies. Also, fuck your rants about intersectionalism unless you're willing to acknowledge you're making your gay pride, gay voice, gay advocacy all about Trump. Embarrassing. And banning all gay people who are also Trump people? Wow. When is it ever okay to decide whose visibility as a gay person is marginalized because they have a different gay experience than you? I don't support Trump, but I don't support your unwillingness to acknowledge who the real culprits, world powers are here, and the scapegoat shadow of where your oppression ideologies come from. Your prophecy of Trump not being in line with gay rights has been self-fulfilled. Whether or not there was ever any other realities, we do not care. We have spoken. Fight for your fight, or else you're wrong. Okay, so I don't really want to give my commentary on the paragraph because it's a bit all over the place in terms of being close to a concise message. But I wanted to highlight this paragraph because I think it's an interesting illustration of the internal conflicts within non-Trump supporting yet non-regressive leftist gay minds. I wanted to show this post to give people the idea that there are nuanced ways of thinking within the gay male demographic. There are cool gay guys who aren't full-blown right-wing people. They don't all make YouTube videos, but they're out there. The second thing I wanted to show you is just this sign that I found a picture of on Facebook that I guess was taken at the LA Pride Parade today, which I honestly will give an A for effort. It's referencing the reality television competition show RuPaul's Drag Race, where at the end of each episode, when they kick some drag queen off, they tell them to sashay away. So take a look. They invented a drag name for Trump, and that's the message. Okay, finally, I want to show you this flyer I found on Facebook somewhere. I found a photo of this, which I just think is hilarious. I'll read it out loud. No justice, no pride. A transformative vision of pride. Our demands. Capital Pride will honor the legacy of Pride and the trans women of color who inspired it by ensuring that trans women of color play a central role in decision-making processes. Capital Pride will take a strong position against state violence and end its endorsement of MPD or any other law enforcement agency to march in the Pride Parade. Capital Pride will address its neglect of Indigenous, Muslim, and Two-Spirit communities. Capital Pride will bar corporate entities that inflict harm on historically marginalized LGBTQ2S people from participation in Pride events. That's a new acronym. I'd never LGBTQ2S? That's That's what it says, right? Okay. Capital Pride will immediately sever all ties with Wells Fargo and defense contractors and donate any and all funds from them to local community-based organizations that support queer, trans, and two-spirit communities. Capital Pride will commit to restructuring, replacing, and expanding its board of directors to represent and center the leadership of historically marginalized communities. And then they say in the bottom, we use the phrase historically marginalized. Oh, there's a typo. I was confused. Sorry. I think they meant to say, when we use the phrase historically marginalized, we refer to trans people, particularly trans women of color and LGBTQIA2S people of color, particularly those who are native or indigenous, low income, Muslim, immigrant, disabled, or undocumented. Interesting. They left black people out. Very interesting. Okay. So, this is just tragic. It's an obvious intersectional feminist attempt to reward the winners of the Oppression Olympics and give them control over LGBTQ organizations. But of course, considering they keep mentioning Muslim LGBT people like that's some big neglected and virtuous population, if these people were to be given any decision-making power, it would be the inmates running the asylum. So, yeah, those are just 3 artifacts of 2017 Pride festivities, and those are my reflections. So, until something else happens, let me know your thoughts in the comments and ask me a few questions. There's probably gonna be something funny before the end of the month. And of course, stay tuned to my channel. Hit the bell button so you don't get unsubscribed.